Well, hello and welcome to Bob's Kitchen, episode number 30. I'm Bob, this is my kitchen. Let's get started. You know, on my blog at bobscooking.com, I took an informal poll of what people like to cook in the fall. And the number one ingredient that everybody came up with is butternut squash. So today, we're gonna make a butternut squash and beef stew that is out of this world and really easy. Let me show you the ingredients. The great thing about today's recipe is that it's actually pretty simple. You just have to measure out the ingredients so that all the flavors are present. We're going to start with 1.5 pounds of butternut squash cut into 1 to 2 inch cubes, 2 pounds of stew meat cut into 2 inch cubes, and then our flavors. We've got 2 cloves of garlic, loosely diced, rosemary, 2 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons of herbes de Provence. Now, herbes de Provence varies depending on where you pick it up. This happens to be oregano, thyme flowers, and lavender flowers. And backing that up is a cup of diced sun-dried tomatoes. Now, one of the things you want to look for in sun-dried tomatoes is there's a fad right now to package sun-dried tomatoes in tomato sauce, which sort of defeats the purpose. You want this nice dried product so when you add it to your soup, it's releasing the flavor into your soup, not into the prepackaged muck that sometimes sun-dried tomatoes can be packaged with. So that. Then we're gonna cook with 2 cups of Marsala wine, salt and pepper to taste, olive oil, beef broth, and then the secret ingredient. These are ribeye bones. You can ask for them at your butcher, and they're actually cheap because usually these just get thrown out. They have marrow and a little bit of meat on them that we're gonna add when we get to the simmer spot in our recipe. And these are gonna add such an intense beef flavor. They are the make-break ingredient. The first step is getting our beef ready, and we're gonna roll it in flour and salt and pepper. I've always wondered why you do that. So we have Google, I looked it up on the computer. And so we're gonna brown it, and it seals the flour in against the beef, and then as it slow cooks in an hour of simmering, it releases that flour and more beef flavor out into our soup and acts as a thickening agent like a cornstarch. A pretty neat chemical trick. And this is how we do it. So we're gonna take our flour, sprinkle it over the beef, just a little bit of salt and pepper, and then toss that. And just toss it to coat, and we'll add it to the pan here in just a sec. Like that. The first step is infusing our olive oil. Next step. But we're just going to record this and test it, right? So, blah, 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 infuse blah and blah. The next step is infusing our olive oil with those deep flavors. So we're going to go around the pan a couple of times with extra virgin olive oil. Then we're going to add the garlic, the rosemary, and the herbes de Provence. We're going to do this on medium heat, leave it there for about a minute. It's going to sizzle and make all sorts of fun, sizzly sounds. Let those flavors infuse. Then we're going to add the beef and brown it for about 5 minutes. So we're at about a minute here, and you can see that the herbs have started bunching up in the olive oil. And man, does this room smell great. You got garlic and lavender and rosemary. This has been about a minute. You don't want to let anything catch. So the next step is adding our beef. So we're going to brown the beef for about 5 minutes. But you see that we're getting that even coating of all that delicious flavor on all of our beef. So we'll cook this for about 5 minutes as the edges start to brown. So the beef is starting to brown on the edges. See that lovely brown we're starting to get on these pieces. And now you'll see on the bottom of the pan we're getting all that lovely brown catch where the beef is starting to catch on the bottom. We're going to collect that with 1.5 cups of Marsala wine. Oh man. Now, along the bottom of the pan with your tongs, you'll just scrape up all that delicious beef flavor off the bottom of the pan. The next step is adding our butternut squash and sun-dried tomatoes. And the final step for honestly leaving the pan alone for about an hour and letting it simmer is adding our beef broth and our beef bones. Okay, we're just going to add the beef broth, and the recipe calls for 3 or 4 cups, but the trick here is to cover everything in beef broth until it's underwater. So that's 4 cups or a quart, so we're going to need just a little more. So we're going to fill this until everything is submerged. There we go. And the final step before, as I said, leaving this on medium-low heat and letting it simmer for an hour is adding our beef bones. And make sure they get submerged and down there in our broth. So now we have our beef bones, our beef, our spices, and our butternut squash in here. We're going to bring this to a boil at high heat. Then once we do that, we're going to turn it down, cover it, and simmer for an hour. And there you have it, a really easy beef and butternut squash stew. This took all of about an hour and a half to prepare. It's really simple, and remember, all of our recipes are out at bobscooking.com. This has been episode number 30 of Bob's Kitchen. You have a great night.